Hi, Dr. Becky here. In this video, I'd like to talk about mindfulness. Now, most of you have heard the term mindfulness. It seems like it's everywhere these days. In a former video, I talked about how mindfulness meditation was a form of relaxation practice. But technically speaking, mindfulness is bigger than that. People who practice mindfulness often have this sense of centeredness or a greater sense of ease or a sense of relaxation at times, but technically speaking, that's not really the goal. It's much broader than that. Jon Kabat-Zinn is someone who developed a mindfulness-based stress reduction program back in the 70s. Now, in a previous video, I talked about Dr. Herbert Benson, who was a cardiologist, and he was looking for ways to help his cardiac patients beyond just the usual treatments. And this led him to the development of the relaxation response principles. About the same time, Jon Kabat-Zinn was looking for ways to adapt meditation practices to help those with chronic pain and chronic illness. So he developed this program called Mindfulness-Based Stress Reduction, and it is a formal 8-week program, and now it is provided at locations around the world. And in fact, we have an instructor here in Billings who provides the 8-week program. The formal mindfulness-based stress reduction program is the one that's been most researched about the benefits of mindfulness. So when you read about how mindfulness can help you mentally and physically and emotionally, it's usually based on research from this program. So Jon Kabat-Zinn's definition, or at least an iteration of his definition, is found over here, and it goes like this. Mindfulness is awareness cultivated by paying attention in a sustained and particular way, on purpose, in the present moment, and non-judgmentally. So mindfulness is both an outcome, that is present moment awareness, and it's also a process. It's something that we do, and that is we intentionally pay attention, and we intentionally do this in a non-judgmental way. Now, present moment awareness is something we have a natural capacity for, and we move in and out of that throughout our day. But interestingly, we don't live there all the time. There was a great and creative study done by Harvard looking at how often we tend to have our awareness, our attention in the present. And they found that almost half of the time, people's minds were wandering, often to the past, maybe ruminating about mistakes, thinking about things in the past, or worrying about the future. So we have this natural capacity, but we're not always there. And this being distracted and ruminating and worrying tends to be particularly not so helpful when we're in the middle of stress. It makes us much more reactive. Viktor Frankl is a psychiatrist who survived the Holocaust. He was in the concentration camps. And he's credited with this quote, and you find that here. And that is, between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. So mindfulness practices help us to find that space more often, to live there more often, to be less reactive to the things that come into our life. So it takes practice. It's a natural ability, but it also takes practice to cultivate this present moment awareness, and particularly to do it in a non-judgmental and kind way. So when we think about practice, practice doesn't mean perfection. It just means something we do over and over again intentionally. So when we think about it, we think about formal and informal practices. Formal practices are what we call meditation. And in a different video, I'll be talking about how to do mindfulness meditation. And then an additional video will actually take you through a guided mindfulness meditation practice. So informal practices are the things that we do throughout our day to help us bring more awareness and more being in the present moment. So think about some things that you do in your everyday life, some things that you'll be doing today, and choose a couple of activities. Now, usually when we bring more mindfulness into our life, it involves slowing down. So choose a couple of activities that you will intentionally slow down as you're doing them, and you intentionally bring more attention to doing them. So it can be simple things like washing the dishes. It can be washing our hands, which we're doing a lot of lately. And with any activity you're choosing, you're just bringing your attention to that, just being present, nothing else to do, but just that activity, that one thing. So you're noticing, like when you're washing your hands, what it feels like when the water hits your hands, what the soap feels like, what the warmth of the water or the coolness of the water feels like. You can bring this kind of attention to activities like if you're working and you're going from one activity to another by walking. If you're like me, most of us tend to be preoccupied as we walk because we're thinking about what we're going to do with the next activity, and we're walking very quickly. So what would it be like to slow that down, to just tone it down a notch and slow the pace of walking, and during that walk, to have your attention just on the present, the act of walking, rather than what you're going to do. It's like an experiment. It'll be interesting for you. You can experiment doing this with all kinds of activities, including phone calls or Skype or interactions with other people. Even during our conversations, our mind tends to wander. This is normal, but we're learning with mindfulness about how to bring that back to the present. So you might practice slowing down your conversations just a bit and seeing if you can bring your attention more into the present. So experiment and see what this is like for you. You might want to write these definitions down and put them somewhere so you can refer back to them. So begin, if it seems right to you, to find ways to bring more intentional mindfulness into your life and see what that's like for you.